Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Jones, and as you can see from the branding over my shoulder, we are here. I say, me and my fellow lecturers, I am here. We are here from the London School of Business and Finance, LSBF. LSBF TV, as in this is live TV. If you're watching this as a recorded product, then I understand it looks a bit dead online, but it is in fact live. I really am here, and there are students that are able to watch this live and correspond with me using the chat. There is another brand that you can see on the screen in front of you, and that is of course this one, the AAT. It is true, I love AAT, and in particular I love level 4 because, as you can see, as I go mini-me into the corner, there I go, we have a job today between 4 and 4:30 to do financial statements of limited companies. FSLC, as you can see, is the AAT abbreviation for this level 4 competence. And the little 4 in the circle there is telling you that this is session number 4. Session number 3 was also me, so if you've had a look at session number 3, you'll see me already. And session number 5 and 6, that's also me as well. And financial statements of limited companies involves producing the financial statements of limited companies. So, for example, last week I was looking at the statement of changes in equity, the statement of changes in equity, the SOCI, and the statement of changes in equity is obviously the financial statement. And in the 2 weeks before, my colleague Reg was looking at the very challenging job of delivering a cash flow statement, again another financial statement. If you look at the task that's starting to appear over my shoulder here, you'll see that there is more to this syllabus than there is in the title, Financial Statement to Limited Companies. It sounds like you're just going to bash out financial statements, right? But no, actually there is a little bit more to this, in so much as you're expected to chat about stuff. There is matter number 1. And here is my response box there for matter number 1. And then there's matter number 2, and there's a response box for matter number 2. And it's my apologies, there is matter number 2, and there is my response box for matter number 2. And you can see that I am going to be using the pen to communicate. And in your submission, you will be typing out the answer. I quite like actually typing, but I tried typing last week when I was in here, and I found that it didn't fully work for me, to be honest with you, and it's quite stressful, you know, diving from studio to studio. So I don't want to add further stress, unnecessary stress to this process. So what I'll do is I'll pick up the pen and I'll communicate using the pen. But I'll reinforce the process of answering this question in the real examination as we work our way through. So back up to the top. So we're going to have a go at two and a half responses. We're going to have a look at matter 1, matter 2, and this little half response in between. So here we go from the top. This is financial statements of limited companies. Just let me sort something out. Something got a bit wobbly here in this room. Thank you for your patience there for just one moment. I've only been speaking to you for 4 minutes and my hands are already very sweaty, so clearly I do need some aircon in this room. I was going to skip it, but it's not going to work for me, clearly. As you can see from the way my body language is opening up my body and looking on the left, I've got a monitor on the left hand side, and in order to keep myself open to you, I'll try as best as I can to read off the monitor. Here I go. You are an AAT student working for Austin Accountants. Yeah, it's the classic bookkeeping role that you're asked to imagine that you're in, and some of you guys will be in this bookkeeping role. Some of you won't, so you have to use your imagination. You are an AAT student working for an accounting firm, Austin. You've been asked to prepare the financial statements of Kansas, a manufacturer of computer components for the year ended, and we're not being asked to actually produce the entire financial statements. We're being asked to address a challenge, a matter, as it says here. Matter 1. As at the current year end, Canvas held inventories which has a cost of 100,000. However, due to a change in the marketplace in which Kansas operates, the selling prices of some of the inventories have fallen. And what you are being asked to do, which is further down the page, is explain to the directors why inventories should be recognised as an asset in the statement of financial position. Now, there are various answers that you could use here, and I hope I do not overdo it by giving you a very full answer. See what you think of this. So, financial reporting produces these things called financial statements, and the key financial statement is the position statement, actually, which is using the classic UK presentation: assets less liabilities equals equity. And as you can see from the requirement here, I'll just highlight the key components of the requirement. The question is asking us to talk about why inventory is an asset. So what we need is the definition of the asset stroke liability. Now, it is a requirement of this level 4 paper that you know the definition of an asset stroke liability and that you know where it comes from. And in fact, those are the first 2 marks that will get me started. So where does the definition of the asset stroke liability come from? It comes from the framework. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a classic heading sentence structure to deliver 4 points. So, oh gosh, I've just come in taken over from Rob. He's very fond of touch sensitive, but he presses quite hard, does Rob, and I can't cope with that. So just let me adjust the pen functionality. No, not there. There we go, pressure sensitive. He likes pressure sensitive, is the thing, technical name for what he likes. So framework, as you can see, I can get a nice consistent thick line without pressing too hard if I use the non-pressure sensitive functionality of this pen. So framework, in fact I'll make that F stand out. There we go, make it stand out a little bit better. So framework, the definition of the asset stroke liability is derived from the framework for financial reporting. Framework for FR. And the framework for financial reporting is the whole framework for how financial reporting works, and you have to be in fulfillment of its definitions. So what is the definition of an asset stroke liability? I admit it, of course, you only need the definition of an asset, but you might find it useful if I give you both, so that if the question is asking about a liability, you can regurgitate the same definition. An asset stroke liability is a controlled right to, sorry, I'm going into asset there, controlled right stroke obligation to an inflow outflow stroke outflow of benefit. And then you just pick out various words and use those words to fit them with the stock. So should we go for right and inflow? You can go for it how you like, actually. It's entirely up to you. There's a great degree of freedom of expression here, but I'm going to go for these two. So right clearly, just let me get the name of the client. I know we're called Austin. What's the client's called? Where is it now? Kansas. Clearly Kansas possess the rights to sell their stock. What was the other one I was going to go for? Inflow. Clearly, when Kansas do sell their stock, cash will flow in. And that would score you full marks. There's no doubt about it, that would score you full marks. But you might feel more comfortable if I end with a conclusion. Where do we start with the question? Let's see what the question says. Explain to directors why inventories should be recognised as an asset. Inventories is recognised as an asset because it fulfills the definition. And I have to be honest with you, when I am typing away, I am more comfortable typing. And that is the mode of communication that you will use in your examination. You will just type in the answer. And I do like typing. Don't think I'm in any way scared of the keyboard over here. But I did use it last week and I found myself pressing all sorts of wrong buttons. It's not quite the same using a keyboard in the studio as it is using a keyboard in the examination. So I'm just going to keep away from it this week because I had trouble with it last week. But yeah, you use the keyboard to communicate. Great, much easier, much clearer. No one has to worry about reading your writing. Then we have this. I couldn't believe the answer to this. I'll just write down what the AAT were prepared to accept for a full 2 marks. Identify the 2 measurement bases which should be used to determine the amount at which the inventory should be recognised in the financial statements. Stock is valued at the lower of cost and net realisable value, where cost is all past expenditure in bringing it to its present location and condition, and net realisable value is how much you expect to sell the asset for, less how much you would have to the costs you would incur on the way to that sale. And that's the full story as regards the relevant standard, the relevant IAS, the relevant International Accounting Standard. But believe it or not, including the abbreviations, here is what the AAT were prepared to accept for a full 2 marks. It's a bit of a shock, but here you go. It is cost and NRV. There you go. Including the abbreviation. That was the full marks. And the trigger word that tells us that there is no explanation required is this one here, identify. But depending on how the clock goes, I will come back and give you full definitions and talk about that a little bit more. But you know, having been in the studio last week and knowing how the clock rolls down suddenly, unexpectedly, and you can get caught out, what I won't do is over answer that question before I've done matter 2. So let me do matter 2 and then I'll come back to that if there is time. All right, here we go. Matter 2. At a golf business event, you are approached by a supplier to Kansas. The supplier is aware that you are associated with Kansas and has asked you why the company is taking longer than usual to pay them. So explain the relevant fundamental accounting principle in accordance with the AAT Code of Professional Ethics. It is, of course, confidentiality. This is the thing, isn't it? Explain as opposed to identify. So it was just whacked down 2 words, 2 phrases up here. Here clearly isn't. It's, you know, explain. And to score 4 marks, you do need to make 4 points. 4 brief points, admittedly, but something along these lines. So it's easy to forget who you are in this story, but remember, it's a bit of a weird question because we're not Kansas. You know, you are a junior working for Austin, and someone random at a golf event has started talking work to you. First of all, that's a bit weird. And then the next thing is that they're asking you about one of your clients. It's like, well, I can't talk about my clients. I'm at a golf event. I'm supposed to be playing golf, not talking about clients. It's an awkward situation, and in order to build our answer, maybe we can come up with not only the relevant fundamental principle that tells us to tell him to naff off, but that we also explain that we're not actually going to tell him to naff off, that we can politely explain to him what is going on and make a suggestion as to what the golf player should do to solve their problem, rather than being rude. And we can build an answer on that basis. So what is the relevant fundamental principle in accordance with the code? Well, of course, it's confidentiality. You can't go around blabbing about clients ever, especially at social events. Confidentiality. And I'll continue with the same style, so it's heading sentence. This principle requires us to keep this principle requires us to keep client secrets. Kansas, I am an Austin employee and Kansas is an Austin client, so I cannot talk to the golfer about Kansas. So here comes the way to guarantee that you're going to score full marks. You can not only explain why you can't do it, but you can explain that you are going to explain to the golfer what's going on. You're not just going to blank him, silence him, naff him off, turn your back. You're going to politely explain why you can't talk about Kansas. Explain who you are. I'm an Austin employee. I don't work for Kansas. Kansas is my client. It is forbidden that I discuss my client with anyone. Imagine if I was working for you. You wouldn't want me talking to suppliers and customers, would you? Exactly. So that's the kind of thing I'm going to do. I'm going to open my shoulders and communicate with my golfing partner rather than just naff them, push them away. So what was that? Explain. So I will explain to the golfer why I cannot discuss. I cannot discuss Kansas and I'm going to make a suggestion. I can do this. I will suggest to the golfer that the golfer should call Kansas to discuss matters directly. And I think what I'll do for this one is I will close out with a little bit of examiner's comment here, and I'll just bring up the answer again here over my shoulder so that I can discuss through the examiner's comments. So this question has been extracted from the specimen paper that's available on your My AAT website. So you have a My AAT login code. I have a My AAT login code, and I have logged in to my AAT, and I have seen specimen paper 1. So this is taken for specimen paper 1, and I really recommend you go to specimen paper 1 and have a go at specimen paper 1, just to make sure that you can not only answer the questions but also you're familiar with using the keyboard and navigating the examination process, the computer-based examination, making sure you're good with the computers. Anyway, coming back to this is, as you can see, it's a computer simulation. It's taken from a computer simulation, but the computer simulation is actually taken from a real exam question from 2016. So this is not only the current specimen paper, it is actually a past exam question examined in 2016. And the examiner has made comments about students' responses to this and other parts of the examination. And frankly, the cash flow statement isn't all that easy, and the SOCI not all that easy either. And I would say this is probably one of the easier parts of the examination. I know the performance was generally good right throughout all the tasks that was set to students at level 4 accounting. This was one of the weaker areas, and there seemed to be a couple of reasons for this. The examining team was reporting that they felt there was a couple of reasons for this, and one of these was the style by which students were communicating. The other was kind of a fear of communicating about this kind of subject, picking up the pen and talking about numbers using the pen, indeed using the keyboard, using Word for Windows. And can I just suggest to you that, now you've seen me do this, it isn't really that hard, is it? And secondly, can I show to you the technique that I'm using in order to deliver my construction. Can you see the 4 marks? In fact, I'll highlight the 4 marks. Can you see the 4 marks that I'm highlighting here? What I'm doing is I'm saying, right, okay, 4 marks means 4 points. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to whack down 4 points. And then I'm making 4 very, very simple points about, what's the idea of the ethical principle? That's confidentiality. How does confidentiality apply to Kansas? And 2 further points, which in this case is making a suggestion of how to deal with this very awkward situation. It is an awkward situation, isn't it? And if you go for this heading sentence style, I think it'll really help you to score full marks. But there is one more thing to say. When you get into the heading sentence style, it is common for students to struggle a little bit with the headings. You might find that instantly you know what heading you want to have, and then you write under the heading, you know what heading you want. But if you find yourself struggling a little bit to deliver the heading, do you know what you should do? Deliver the sentence, pull a key word out of the sentence and put it as the heading. So you go, you actually deliver an answer that goes heading sentence, heading sentence. But as you are typing, you put the sentence and then you put the heading in. Then you put the sentence and then you put the heading in. So you pull a key word from your own sentence and drop that in as the heading that you use. And I think if you use this style of communication, it'll help you to, 1, build confidence in your own ability to communicate, and 2, make sure that you address the right number of marks. Okay, I'm going to go big me now and summarize what I've said to you. So my name is Martin Jones, and I always find it challenging to remember the names of these papers. They're sometimes a little bit difficult to pronounce. This one is called Financial Statements of Limited Companies, FSLC, Financial Statements of Limited Companies, and more to the point, it's level 4 financial accounting. As you can see from the brand reinforced over my shoulder, this is the LSBF TV. I love AAT. My name is Martin Jones, and I will see you soon when we continue our studies.